Hello, my name is Sean Civic, Technical Marketing Engineer with Cisco. This video will show you how to configure site-based role-based access control within Catalyst Center. So what is site-based role-based access control? Well, it's a new feature in Catalyst Center 3.1 that allows you to give different users different levels of access to network resources at different levels within your network hierarchy. It does this through the combination of sites, custom roles, and access groups. A site is simply an element in your hierarchy, such as an area, building, or floor. A custom role is a user-defined set of access privileges used to permit and/or deny access to network resources within Catalyst Center. And then an access group applies the settings of a custom role to a particular site. And then users are placed into one or more access groups. This video will cover three typical use cases. The first one is John Smith, who is in two access groups, USA Write and Global Read. John will have full control of all network devices within the USA site, and he will have read access to all other devices. Another user, Ravi Gupta, is in an access group called APJC Read, and he will have read access to all the network devices, but only in APJC. And then our third user, Sophia Martin, is also in one access group called EMEA PNP Swim. This access group has read access to all the devices within EMEA, but can also perform plug-and-play and swim operations, but again, only to the devices in EMEA. So in the demo, when you're setting up site-based role-based access control, the first thing that you need to do is set up a custom role. So we go into System Settings, or System Users and Roles, and then Role-Based Access Control. By default, there are three roles created, which are the Super Admin role, which has full access to everything within Catalyst Center. There's also a Network Admin role, which can make changes to all the network devices, but can't make changes to Catalyst Center itself. And then there's the Observer role, which is basically read-only access. But I'm going to create a new role, and I'm going to call this role Write Role. Now on this particular role, I'm just going to assign the write privileges to all the settings. However, there are certain settings that are global settings, and they really don't make sense to apply at a site level. And those settings are called out where they say this permission set cannot be assigned to a site-scoped non-global access group if set to write. So on those settings, I'll set it either to read or deny. And there may be some settings where it says this permission set cannot be assigned to a site-scoped non-global access group if set to read or write. And in those cases, I'll just set it to deny. So as a recap for this write role, I'm just assigning every permission set to write, except for the ones that are global, and then I'm setting them either to read or deny, depending on what the requirement is for that particular permission. So I'll just fast forward to the end through the power of editing, and we'll move on from there. So now that our write role is created, I'll create a new role, and I'll call this one read role. Now by default, all the settings are already set to read, so I'm just going to create this role, and I will click next, and then I'll just create the role. Now that our read role is created, I'll create one more role, and I'll call this one PNP Swim. So this one is going to have read access to everything except for under network operations. They will have write access to PNP and also swim. Now that our custom roles are created, we can create our access groups. So I'll click on System, Users, and Roles, and click on Access Group. And then I'll create a new access group. So this first access group I'll call USA Write. I will assign the write role and apply it to the USA. I'll then create another access group, and I'll call this one Global Read, and I'll assign the read role, and I'll apply it at the global level. I'll then create another access group. We'll call this one APJC Read, and I'll assign the read role, and I'll apply it to the APJC site. Then we'll create one more access group. On this one, we'll call it EMEA PMP Swim. So I'll assign the PMP Swim custom role and apply it to EMEA. Now that our access groups are created, I'll go ahead and create a new user. I'll click on the user management and click add. I'll call this user J Smith for John Smith, and I'll assign him to the USA Write access group as well as the Global Read access group. So this user will be in 2 access groups, and I'll go ahead and assign a password. Now that that user is created, I'll go ahead and log off as admin, and I will log in as J Smith, who is in the 2 access groups. Now it's important to remember that access groups are not cumulative. There's only going to be 1 access group active at any point in time. So for instance, John Smith is currently under the USA Write access group, which means he has full control of all the network devices within the USA, but he can't see any of the other locations because he's not under the Global Read. So he has full control of USA Write because he's in the USA Write. But if he wants to see other devices outside of the USA, he has to switch over to the Global Read category, whereas now he can see all the network devices, but he can't make changes to any of them. For instance, here, I used to be able to provision this device in the USA. Now I can't provision it because I'm under the Global Read. If I did want to make changes to a device in the USA, I would have to switch back to the USA Write and complete my changes there. Site-based role-based access control also works with external authentication. This can be set up through system, users, and roles, and then external authentication. You do need a AAA server configured. So let's do that now. We'll do that by clicking on System and then Settings, and then going down to Authentication and Policy Servers. And then I can either add a AAA server or I can add an ICE server, which would be integrated with Catalyst Center. For the purposes of the demo, I'll just add a AAA server, which is going to be an ICE server. So I'll add the ICE IP address as well as the shared secret. I'll go ahead and click Advanced, and I always enable both RADIUS and TACACS if your AAA server does support both. So now that my AAA server is active, I can enable external authentication by going back to System, Users, and Roles, External Authentication, and then I'll enable external users. When you're setting up external authentication, Catalyst Center expects a Cisco AV pair to come back with a comma-separated list of access groups from your AAA server. So I do want to have my AAA attribute to be Cisco AV pair. And then I can also enable it for RADIUS or TACACS. If you do want to change it over to TACACS, you'll see that the update is grayed out. But if you update the shared secret, you'll be able to change it from RADIUS over to TACACS. So just keep that in mind. If you want to switch between, just enter in the shared secret again to update those settings. Now that external authentication is configured, let's take a look behind the scenes to see what's really going on. When a user logs into Catalyst Center will forward that login request to the configured AAA server. The AAA server will then go through a series of conditions to authenticate and authorize the user, typically going to an external identity source, such as Active Directory. Once the user is authenticated, we'll also get a list of attributes for that user, which we can then use in our authorization policy. If the user is authorized, then a Cisco AV pair will be returned to Catalyst Center. And that Cisco AV pair is a comma-separated list of access groups to which the user should be assigned. So let's go ahead and see how to set up a RADIUS server. And then after that, we'll show you how to set up a TACACS server. And then we'll log in with our 3 respective users. So let's run through an example RADIUS configuration in ICE. The first thing that we're going to want to do is add a network device for Catalyst Center. So I'll click Administration, Network Devices. Then I'll click the Add button, and I'll give it a name of Catalyst Center Servers. And then I want to add the IP address of my enterprise interface, which in my case is 172.21.21.12. I also like to add the enterprise VIP, which in my case is 172.21.21.13. I'm also going to be using this a device type, so I'm going to create a new device type, and I'm going to call this device type Catalyst Center Servers, and this will be used later in my RADIUS rules or my profile policy sets. After adding in the device type, I do want to make sure that it is selected for this, and then I'll go ahead and add the RADIUS shared secret. And this will be the same shared secret that I use within Catalyst Center. And even though this is only setting up for RADIUS, I also like to add in the shared secret for TACACS in case I want to add this later on or use that functionality later. So I just add both the RADIUS and TACACS shared secret passwords. Now that my network device is set up, the next step would be to create an Active Directory join point. So I click on Administration and then External Identity Sources. Under Active Directory, I'm going to add, and I'll give it a name of AD_civic for my join point, and then I'll give it my domain name. It'll ask if I want to add all the nodes to Active Directory. I'll say yes, and then I'll enter in the Windows administrator account username and password. Once Catalyst Center is joined to the domain, I have to specify the Active Directory groups that I want to be able to query within ICE. So I'll click on the groups and I'll retrieve the list of groups. Now I've set all my Active Directory groups to start with CC for Catalyst Center, just to make it easier to filter. But when I search for CC, I'll see that I have a CC APJC read Active Directory group. I also have one called CC EMEA plug and play swim. I have a global read, and I also have USA write. I've also added groups for the super admin global, network admin, and observer roles. So I'm just going to pull all those devices, all those groups into ICE so that I can query all those individual groups. After I've set my AD join point, the next thing would be to set my results. The results are going to be the Cisco AV pairs that are returned to Catalyst Center when a user is authorized. So I click on Policy and then Results, and I'll go down to Authorization Profiles. And then I'm going to add a new authorization profile. Now keep in mind, this is the Cisco AV pair that gets returned. So on this one, I'll call this one USA Write Global Read. And then I'll come down to Cisco AV pair, and I'll set the Cisco AV pair equal to AGS for access groups equal, and then USA_write, comma, global_read. This will put the user into two access groups, one called USA write and another one called global read. Then I'll create another authorization profile, and this one we'll call APJC read. I'll again create my Cisco AV pair with AGS equal to the access group of APJC_read. Now that that is created, I'll create another authorization profile, and this one's going to be called EMEA plug and play swim. So then I'll create my Cisco AV pair with AGS equal to EMEA_PMP_swim, which is the name of my access group and Catalyst Center. And I do want to create one more, and this will be for the super admin group. So I'll create another authorization profile for super admin global. And again,_ set the Cisco AV pair equal to AGS equals super admin global. So it'll be super-admin_global, and it is case sensitive. So make sure that your results or your Cisco AV pair matches the access group that you have configured within Catalyst Center. So now that I've set my results, the next step would be to create my policy sets. So I'll create a new policy set, and I'll call this policy set Catalyst Center Server Login. So this will be for all my Catalyst Center server logins. If I have multiple servers, I could all go into this one policy set. And for the condition, if the device type equals a Catalyst Center server, then use this policy set. So that was the reason for creating the special device type when we were creating this server. And then we just want to use the default network access. You could slim it down to PAP-ASCII if you want, or however you want to do that, but I'm just going to use the defaults there. So I'm going to save this policy, and then I'll click the arrow to start adding my authentication and authorization policies. I'll create a new authentication policy, and I'll call this one AD users. And then for the condition, if the network access protocol coming in is RADIUS, in other words, if it's coming from Catalyst Center as RADIUS, then use this condition. And what we want to do is when we use this condition, we want to use that Active Directory join point to authenticate the users. After we've created the authentication policy, we're going to come down and we're going to create our authorization policies. I'll create a first one called USA Write Global Read. Then I'll add the condition. Now, if the user is in one of the Active Directory groups, in other words, on the AD join point for one of those external groups, and if that group equals the USA_Write Active Directory group, and if the user is also in the Global Read Active Directory group, then match this condition and return the USA Global Read result, which is the Cisco AV pair of AGS equals USA_Write, Global_Read. Then I'll create a new authorization policy, and I'll call this one APJC Read. Again, I'll create my condition to where if the AD join point for external groups equals CC-APJC read, then return the Cisco AV pair of APJC_read, or the result of the APJC_read. Then I'll create a new authorization policy, and this one I'll call EMEA plug-and-play swim. Again, I will check Active Directory for the group, and if the group is equal to plug-and-play swim, EMEA plug-and-play swim, then return the results of EMEA plug-and-play swim, which is the Cisco AV pair of EMEA_swim, matching to that access group. Now, I do want to have my super admin user also able to log in, so I'll create one more authorization policy, and I'm going to put this one at the top, and I'm going to call this one super admins, and if the Active Directory group equals the CC super admin global group, then return the results of the super admin result, or the Cisco AV pair for super-admin_global. So this represents all the rules and policy sets and everything that you need to configure RADIUS to enable external authentication within Catalyst Center. This section of the video will go over an example TACACS configuration on ICE, and it assumes that you haven't done the RADIUS configuration yet. So starting from scratch, the first thing that we want to do is go and ICE go into administration and then deployment and verify that we have the device admin service enabled. So enable the device admin service and save that configuration in ICE. And then we want to add a network device. So a new network device, I will click add, and I will call this one Catalyst Center Servers. And I will add the IP address of my enterprise interface, which in my case is 172.21.21.12. And then I also like to add the enterprise VIP. So I'll also add 172.21.21.13. Now I do want to create a new device type. So that new device type will be used in my policy sets later. So on the device type, I'm going to add a new device type called Catalyst Center Servers. And then I want to make sure that I select the device type as Catalyst Center Servers when I'm adding this server. Once that is complete, I will go ahead and add in the RADIUS password. Even though we're configuring this for TACACS, I do like to add in the RADIUS password and the TACACS password, or the shared secret, just in case I decide to use one or the other later. So whenever I set up the RADIUS server, I always set up both TACACS and RADIUS. So I'll enter the shared secret for both RADIUS and TACACS, and then I'll go ahead and save that. Once my network device is set up and configured, the next thing I'm going to do is create an Active Directory join point. So I'll go to Administration and then External Identity Sources. And then under Active Directory, I'm going to add a new join point. I'll give it a name. In this case, it'll be AD_civic, and then I'll add my domain name. Once I join, it's going to ask if I want to add all the nodes to Active Directory, in which I do. So I'm going to add in the Windows administrator username and password. Now that I've joined Active Directory with ICE, I do want to select the groups that I want to query within ICE. So I'll click on the groups, and then I've set up all my Active Directory group names to begin with CC to make it easier to filter. So I'll go ahead and search for CC, and you'll see that I have a group called CC APJC Read, CC EMEA PNP Swim, CC Global Read, and CC USA Write. And I also have groups for the super admin group, local network admin group, and the observer roles. So I'm just going to add all those groups to allow them to be queried from ICE. The next thing is to set my results. So I'll click on Work Centers and then Policy Elements and then the results. And then underneath TACACS Profiles, I'll add a new TACACS Profiles. This one I'll call USA Write Global Read. I'll scroll down to the common task type and set it as generic. And then I'll add a custom attribute, and I want it to be mandatory. And then the name is Cisco-AV-pair, and the value is AGS equals USA_write, global_read. So these are the two access groups that I have in Catalyst Center. So I'll go ahead and save that, and I'll add a new TACACS profile. I'll call this one APJC Read. Again, I'll set the common task type to generic, and I'll add my custom attributes. So I'll make it mandatory, Cisco AV pair, and then AGS will equal APJC_read, or basically the name of my access group within Catalyst Center. I'll go ahead and create another TACACS profile. I'll call this one EMEA Plug and Play Swim. Again, the common task type is generic, and I'll go ahead and add the custom attributes of mandatory, Cisco AV pair, and AGS equals EMEA_PNP_swim, the access group specified in Catalyst Center. And because I do want my super admin to be also able to log in via external authentication, I will create one more access group, and we'll call this one super admin global. And then we'll also set the generic task type to generic, and then we'll add the custom attribute, mandatory, Cisco AV pair, and then the name of the access group, which is AGS equals super-admin_global for that user. Now that we have our results set up, we can move on and create our policy sets. So to create a device admin policy set for TACACS, we'll click on Work Centers and Device Admin Policy Set. Then I'll create a new condition, and we'll call this Catalyst Center Server Logins. And if the device type is coming from a Catalyst Center server, then use this policy set. And we want to use the default device admin for the protocols. I'll save that. And then we'll go ahead and add in our authentication and authorization policies. So I'll start with my authentication policy. I'll create a new one, and we'll call this one Active Directory Users or AD Users. And for the condition, if the network access protocol equals TACACS, then use this as the authentication policy and use the AD join point, AD civic, to authenticate the users. Once the users are authenticated, we can create our authorization policy. So I'll create a new authorization policy. I'll call this one USA write and global read. And if the user is in the AD join point for external groups for the USA write, and he's also in the Active Directory group for global read, then return the USA write global read TACACS result, which is the Cisco AV pair of AGS equals USA underscore write, comma, global underscore read. Then we'll create a new condition, and we'll call this one APJC read. And if on this one, if the user is in the APJC read Active Directory group, then match this condition and return the APJC TACACS profile, which is the Cisco AV pair of AGS equals APJC underscore read. We'll create an additional policy set, and this one we'll call EMEA plug and play swim, with the condition that if the user is in the plug and play swim Active Directory group, then return the EMEA plug and play swim TACACS profile, which is the Cisco AV pair of AGS equals EMEA underscore PMP underscore swim. And because we do want to enable our super admin to log in via external authentication, we'll create one more role, and we'll call this one super admin. And for this one, when the condition for if the user is in the CC super admin global Active Directory group, then return the TACACS profile for super admin global, which is the Cisco AV pair of AGS equals super-admin underscore global. And remember that syntax does matter for these. So make sure that your spelling is correct. Your TACACS profile has to match up to the access group within Catalyst Center. So this outlines the steps needed to set up TACACS in your environment to support external authentication within Catalyst Center. And now we'll go ahead and test the login capabilities using external authentication. So I'll log out as admin, and I will log in as John Smith. If you remember, John has two access groups. He's got the USA write, which gives him full control to all devices in the US, and he's also in the global read, which gives him read permission to all the other devices. So while USA write is active, you can see that I can see all the devices in North America. I can add areas, add buildings. I have full control to everything. I can change the hierarchy, but only in the USA. I can also go to inventory, and I can provision devices. I can make changes, so on and so forth. So full control to all the devices in North America. However, I can't see any devices in any other locations. If I do want to see those, I could switch to global read, which does allow me to view all the other devices. For instance, I can also view all the additional locations in my hierarchy, but I can't make any changes. I can't add an area, I can't add a building. Also, if I go to provision and inventory, then my provision is, I'm not able to provision because I'm still under the global read. Even for devices that are in the USA, while I'm under the global read, I can't make changes. I'd have to go back to the USA write access group to make changes in the US. Now I'll log in as Ravi Gupta. If you remember Ravi as APJC, he's in an access group called APJC read. So he has read access to all the devices in APJC, but he can't see devices in EMEA, he can't see devices in America, and he can't make changes to any devices in APJC. He can't add an area, he can't add a building, so on and so forth. If he goes to inventory, he's not able to provision. It's just not an option. The option is not available. It's just because he's under the read custom role settings. Now I'll go ahead and log out and log in as Sophia Martin. And if you remember Sophia, she's in an EMEA plug-and-play swim access group. And this access group allows her to view all the devices in EMEA. And she also has plug-and-play and swim capabilities, but again, only to those devices in EMEA. So she can't make any changes. She can't add an area, can't add a building or anything like that. Just read-only access to that. And when I go to the inventory, she's not able to provision one of the existing devices. But if I do go to plug and play, she would be able to plug and play a device and also update software images on this particular one. So there's a lot of flexibility and site-based, role-based access control. So just a couple things to keep in mind. Site-based, role-based access control is a new feature that allows you to give different users different levels of access at different locations within your hierarchy. It's a combination of a site and a custom role, which is used in conjunction with a new feature called an access group. So thank you for watching. Have a nice day.